Picture a pub where the nearest neighbour lives 200 kilometres away, where the road is just red dirt through endless spin effects, and the only sound is wind rattling the corrugated iron roof. This is Tuesday afternoon at the Birdsville Hotel in Queensland, where the population hovers around 140, and the next town is a 6-hour drive across country that will kill your car if you're unprepared. Australia has always been a nation built on isolation. While other countries measure distance in hours, Australians measure it in days. The continent is so vast and so empty that entire European countries could disappear into the stretches between towns, and nobody would notice for weeks. And scattered across this red emptiness, defying every principle of sound business planning, stand some of the most isolated drinking establishments on Earth. 15 pubs that exist in places where logic says nothing should exist, where the closest capital city is further away than most people drive in a year, where flood, fire, drought, and economic reality have tried repeatedly to shut them down, and yet they endure. Because in the Australian Outback, a pub is not just a place to drink. It is the heartbeat of survival itself, the meeting place that holds scattered communities together. Today, we're traveling to 15 of these impossible establishments, from the red centre to the tropical north, from the Nullarbor Plain to the edge of the Simpson Desert. We'll meet the publicans who refuse to leave, the travellers who journey thousands of kilometres just to have one beer in the middle of nowhere, and the communities that would simply cease to exist without these tin-roofed temples of ice-cold lager and warm mateship. This is not a celebration of drinking. This is a story about what it takes to maintain human connection when you're surrounded by a landscape designed to kill you. Welcome to the most isolated watering holes in Australia. Let's start in Queensland, in a town called Birdsville. Population 140. The Birdsville Hotel sits at the edge of the Simpson Desert, 1,200 kilometres west of Brisbane. To give you perspective, that's the same distance as London to Rome. Except there's no motorway, no service stations every 50 kilometres, and no backup plan if your vehicle dies on the track. The hotel itself is a classic outback structure, single story with wide verandas and a corrugated iron roof that bakes under a sun so relentless it warps the timber. Inside, the walls are covered with photographs of the famous Birdsville races, an annual horse racing carnival that transforms this ghost town into a makeshift city of 10,000 people for exactly 2 days every September. The rest of the year, the hotel survives on grey nomads making the Birdsville track journey and locals who call this furnace home. Every bottle of beer, every kilo of steak, every replacement part has to be trucked in from Mount Isa, 600 kilometres across roads that disappear when summer rains hit. When roads wash out, the hotel runs on what's in the storeroom until the mud dries. There's no backup supplier. You stock up or you shut down. 300 kilometres north of Birdsville, accessible only by the infamous Birdsville track, sits the William Creek Hotel in South Australia. If Birdsville feels remote, William Creek is another dimension entirely. The official population is 4 people. 4. The hotel serves a cattle station the size of Belgium, and the occasional adventurer brave enough to tackle one of the most unforgiving dirt roads in Australia. The landscape here is biblical in its emptiness. Flat red dirt stretching in every direction, broken only by the shimmer of heat haze and the skeletal remains of broken down vehicles that didn't make it. The William Creek Hotel is famous for scenic flights over Lake Eyre, a vast salt lake that fills maybe once every decade when rains in far north Queensland send floodwaters south through Channel Country. When the lake fills, William Creek explodes with tourists, photographers, and scientists. But when dry, which is most of the time, William Creek returns to defiant silence. The beer garden is a few plastic chairs under corrugated awning, and the view is 360 degrees of nothing. No trees, no hills, just horizon. The publican here runs the town's only fuel pump, the only accommodation, and the only food service. If you break down between Marree and Oodnadatta, this is your only hope. The nearest hospital is in Kubapedi, 250 kilometers away, across roads that might not exist after rain. This is not a business operation. It's a public service masquerading as a pub, kept alive by sheer determination. Now travel west across South Australia to the Nullarbor Plain and you'll hit the Nullarbor Roadhouse. Technically, not a pub in the traditional sense, but it serves beer, and that's close enough for Outback standards. The name Nullarbor comes from Latin, null arbor, meaning no trees. And the name is not an exaggeration. This is the longest straight stretch of highway in Australia, 146 kilometers without a single bend. The Roadhouse sits roughly in the middle of the 850-kilometre drive between Norseman in Western Australia and Seduna in South Australia. There is nothing out here. No mobile phone signal, no towns, no escape if something goes wrong. The Roadhouse survives on passing traffic, truck drivers hauling freight between Perth and the eastern states, and tourists ticking off the Nullarbor crossing. Fuel prices are astronomical because every litre is trucked in from hundreds of kilometres away. But the beer is cold, and staff tell stories about travellers in vehicles that should never have attempted the crossing. Sedans with bald tyres, campervans with no spares, motorcyclists who underestimated water loss in 40-degree heat. The walls of the Roadhouse are covered with stickers, signatures, and notes left by travellers from every corner of the planet. It's become a tradition to leave your mark, a small proof that you made it to one of the most desolate points on the Australian continent and lived to drink about it. Head north into the Northern Territory and you'll find the Daly Waters Pub, one of the oldest pubs in the Territory, and a compulsory stop on the journey between Darwin and Alice Springs. Daly Waters has a population of around 23 people, and the pub is the only reason anyone stops here. The building is a sprawling complex of corrugated iron and timber covered in thousands of items left by visitors over the decades, Barrow hanging from the ceiling, foreign currency pinned to the walls, business cards, hats, number plates, and an entire collection of international flags. The pub was established in 1930 when Daly Waters was a refueling stop for Qantas flights pioneering the route between Australia and England. These days, the pub survives on grey nomad trade. Retirees in four-wheel drives making the pilgrimage up the Stuart Highway. The pub serves massive beef steaks on an open grill, with nightly bush poetry and tall tales from staff who've perfected the Outback yarn. But Daly Waters also represents something important about these isolated pubs. They are living museums of Australian folklore. Every item on the walls has a story. Every visitor adds to the mythology. The pub is not just a business. It's a repository of shared experience, a place where strangers bond over the absurdity of travelling hundreds of kilometres just to have a beer in a town that barely exists. Push further into the Northern Territory and you'll reach Larrimah, population 11. The Larrimah Hotel sits on the Stuart Highway, roughly 500 kilometres south of Darwin. This town is famous for two things: being almost completely abandoned and being the site of one of Australia's strangest missing person cases. In 2017, a local man named Paddy Moriarty vanished along with his dog. No trace, no clues. The case remains unsolved, and the mystery has turned Larrimah into a morbid curiosity for true crime enthusiasts. The pub itself is a classic Territory establishment: wide verandas, lazy ceiling fans, and a bar that has seen better decades. The walls show old photographs of Larrimah in its heyday, when it was a bustling railway town during World War II. When the railway closed, the town died. The pub is one of only two businesses left. Some weeks, the town's entire population drinks less than a few cartons. But the pub stays open because closing would mean Larrimah ceases to exist entirely. Travel south to the Red Centre and you'll find the Barrow Creek Hotel, roughly 300 kilometres north of Alice Springs on the Stuart Highway. Barrow Creek has a population of around 12 people, and the pub is the social centre of a region covering thousands of square kilometres of desert. The building is small, weathered, and covered in graffiti left by travellers dating back decades. Inside, the walls are plastered with banknotes from every country imaginable, each one signed and dated by visitors passing through. Barrow Creek is also known for something darker. In 2001, British backpacker Peter Falconio was murdered on the highway near town, his body never found. The case attracted international attention and turned Barrow Creek into a reference point for outback travel dangers. The pub became a gathering place for journalists and investigators, but for locals, it remained what it always was, the only cold drink between Alice Springs and Tennant Creek. The publican will tell you that running a pub this remote means dealing with challenges city people cannot fathom. Water comes from bores that sometimes run dry. Power comes from generators that break down in the heat. The nearest mechanic is hours away. The nearest hospital is in Alice Springs. If something goes catastrophically wrong, help is not coming quickly. You solve your own problems or you don't survive. Now let's talk about the Innamincka Hotel in South Australia, a pub that sits in one of the most historically significant and brutally isolated corners of the country. Innamincka is located on Cooper Creek, roughly 1,070 kilometres north of Adelaide. The town has a permanent population of around 12 people, and it exists primarily as a base for oil and gas workers servicing the nearby fields. The hotel is a low-slung building designed to withstand the extreme temperatures and the occasional flooding from Cooper Creek. Innamincka is famous as the site where explorers Burke and Wills met their tragic end during their ill-fated expedition to cross Australia from south to north in 1861. The dig tree, where they buried supplies and carved messages, is located nearby. The pub serves as the unofficial museum, with displays documenting the expedition. The hotel also caters to the growing number of four-wheel drive tourists, tackling the Strassaleki track and the Birdsville track, two of the most challenging outback routes in the country. The publican stocks spare parts, fuel, and supplies because breakdowns are not a matter of if, but when. The landscape here is unforgiving. Summer temperatures regularly exceed 45 degrees Celsius. Water is scarce. The nearest town is hundreds of kilometres away. The pub is a lifeline. Head west into Western Australia and you'll find the Sandfire Roadhouse, roughly 600 kilometres south of Broome on the Great Northern Highway. Sandfire is not a town. It's a roadhouse, a fuel stop, and a pub in the middle of the Pilbara region. The population is whoever happens to be working there that week, usually around 5 people. The surrounding landscape is red dirt, spinifex, and termite mounds stretching to the horizon. Sandfire exists for one reason: to service the road trains and four-wheel drives making the long haul between Broome and Port Hedland. The Roadhouse is a sprawling complex with fuel pumps, a small shop, basic accommodation, and a bar that serves cold beer to travellers who've been driving for hours without seeing another human being. The staff will tell you the isolation is the hardest part. There's no town to go to on your day off, no cinema, no cafe. You work, you sleep, and you watch the road. But Sandfire also has a certain beauty that reveals itself at sunset. At dusk, the red dirt glows like molten copper, and the sky turns shades of purple and orange that seem impossible. The silence is absolute and overwhelming. The stars at night are so bright you can read by them. For people who crave solitude and escape from modern noise, this is paradise. For everyone else, it's a test of sanity and endurance. In the far north of Western Australia, near the town of Halls Creek, you'll find the Tanami Roadhouse. Halls Creek itself has a population of around 1,500, but the roadhouse serves the Tanami Track, a remote dirt road cutting through the Tanami Desert into the Northern Territory. The track is infamous for being one of the most isolated and challenging routes in Australia. No mobile phone coverage, no fuel stops for hundreds of kilometres, no margin for error. The roadhouse is the last chance to refuel and have a cold beer before committing to the Tanami. Staff are brutally honest about the risks. If you break down out there, you're on your own until someone notices you're missing. The landscape is flat, featureless, hostile. The roadhouse keeps a log of who's heading out and when they're expected back, a safety measure that has saved lives. The bar at the roadhouse is small, functional, and refreshingly free of tourist kitsch. This is a working pub for working people. Truck drivers, station hands, mining contractors. The conversations are about diesel prices, road conditions, and cattle. There's no live music, no trivia nights, just cold beer and honest talk. Further south in Western Australia, near the town of Leonora, you'll find the Gwalia Ghost Town and the old Gwalia Hotel. Leonora has a population of around 500, and Gwalia is technically a ghost town, abandoned when the gold mine shut down in 1963. But the hotel has been restored and now operates as a museum and occasional function venue. The building is a beautiful example of early 20th century Outback architecture with wide verandas and ornate ironwork. Gwalia is significant because it was once home to Herbert Hoover, future President of the United States, who worked as a mining engineer here in the late 1800s. The hotel now tells the story of boom and bust cycles that define outback mining towns. Today, most buildings are ruins, slowly swallowed by desert. The hotel operates sporadically, opening for special events and tours. It's a reminder that isolation is not just about distance, it's about economic viability. When the mine closed, the town died. In South Australia, near the opal mining town of Coober Pedy, you'll find the Oodnadatta Hotel. Oodnadatta has a permanent population of around 200, and it sits at the crossroads of several outback tracks, including the famous Oodnadatta Track. The town is one of the hottest places in Australia, with summer temperatures regularly exceeding 50 degrees Celsius. The locals live underground in dugout homes carved into the hillsides, staying cool while the surface bakes. The hotel is a modest building with a shaded beer garden. The biggest challenge is water. Oodnadatta relies on bore water, which is often salty and unpleasant. Beer sales go up because it's more palatable than tap water. The town survives on tourism from four-wheel drive enthusiasts tackling the Oodnadatta Track. The hotel also serves as an informal information centre. The walls are covered with maps, warnings about road conditions, and contact numbers for emergency services. The publican has pulled stranded travellers out of trouble more times than they can count, organising fuel deliveries, tow trucks, and spare parts for vehicles that broke down in the middle of nowhere. Now let's talk about the Marree Hotel in South Australia. Marree sits at the southern end of the Birdsville Track and the northern end of the Oodnadatta Track, making it a critical hub for outback travellers. The town has a population of around 70, and the hotel is the largest building in town. The structure is classic outback colonial, with wide verandas, thick stone walls, and a pub interior that has changed little in a century. Marree was once a bustling railway town, servicing the old Garn railway line that ran from Adelaide to Alice Springs through harsh desert country. When the railway was rerouted in the 1980s, Marree's population collapsed overnight. The hotel is now the heart of what remains, serving locals, station workers, and the steady flow of adventurers tackling the iconic outback tracks. The bar is filled with maps, photographs, and memorabilia documenting the town's history and glory days. The The publican runs a tight ship, stocking supplies for travelers and offering advice on road conditions, fuel availability, and the best times to attempt the tracks. The hotel also hosts the Marree Camel Cup, an annual camel racing event that draws hundreds of visitors to the town for one chaotic weekend. For the rest of the year, it's quiet. Just the locals, the passing grey nomads, and the endless red dirt. In the far north of Queensland, near the town of Normanton, you'll find the Purple Pub. Normanton has a population of around 1,000, and the pub is famous for being painted entirely in vibrant purple, a colour choice that has made it one of the most photographed buildings in Outback Queensland. The town sits on the Norman River, and it serves as a base for barramundi fishing and crocodile spotting tours. The Purple Pub is a classic Outback establishment with cold beer, hearty meals, and walls covered in fishing trophies and photographs of massive crocodiles pulled from the Norman River. The publican will tell you the isolation here is different from the desert pubs. This is tropical isolation, where the wet season brings monsoonal rains that cut the town off for weeks at a time. Roads flood and become impassable. Rivers rise dramatically. The town becomes an island surrounded by floodwater. But the pub thrives because Normanton is a destination for fishermen chasing barramundi, one of Australia's most prized sport fish. The bar fills with stories of the ones that got away. And the walls are decorated with mounted fish and handwritten records of the biggest catches. The Purple Pub is loud, rowdy, and unapologetically Australian. Finally, let's end in the heart of the Outback at the Bedourie Hotel in Queensland. Bedourie is a tiny town in the Channel Country, roughly 1,500 kilometres west of Brisbane. The population hovers around 120, and the town exists primarily to service the surrounding cattle stations, some of which are larger than small countries. The hotel is a simple building with a shaded courtyard and a bar that serves as the town's meeting place. Bedourie is famous for the Bedourie Races, an annual horse racing event that transforms the town into a temporary outback carnival. For one weekend, the population swells to over 1,000 as station workers, locals, and tourists descend on the town for racing, drinking, and dancing under the stars. The pub becomes the center of everything. The rest of the year, the hotel operates in near silence, serving the handful of locals and the occasional traveller passing through on the Eyre Developmental Road. The publican will tell you the beauty of running a pub. This remote is the simplicity and freedom it brings. There's no competition, no trends to follow, no pressure to reinvent the menu every season. You serve cold beer, hot meals, and honest conversation. You fix what breaks. You stock what sells. You survive. These 15 pubs are more than businesses. They are monuments to human stubbornness and the refusal to surrender to isolation. They exist in places where economics say they shouldn't, where distance alone should have killed them decades ago. But they endure because Australians have always had a relationship with distance that borders on the absurd. We build things in impossible places and then refuse to let them die. These pubs are proof that community can exist anywhere, even when the nearest neighbour is a day's drive away across trackless desert. They are lighthouses in a sea of red dirt, beacons of cold beer and warm company in a landscape that offers neither comfort nor mercy. And as long as there are people willing to drive 1,000 kilometres just to have a drink in the middle of nowhere, these pubs will keep their doors open.